Well, hello. Today is the 1964 Roger Corman, Vincent Price, The Masque of the Red Death. In medieval Italy, Prince Prospero, while visiting the village, finds out the plague known as the Red Death has infected an old woman. He orders the village burned and takes prisoner a beautiful peasant woman, Francesca, and her lover and father. In the castle, Prospero is isolated with the nobility to party as the peasants die of the plague. We find out that Prospero is a Satanist. That his consort Juliana has pledged her soul to Satan. Juliana, though, wants Francesca out and offers to help her and the two men escape. Only Prospero is aware of this and stops them. He has an elaborate game involving poisoned knives. The father is killed while trying to kill Prospero. Giuliani marries Satan and is killed by a falcon after the ceremony. The surviving peasants are shot down by crossbows while seeking shelter from the prince. A dwarf gets revenge on a cruel noble by setting him on fire as he is in an ape costume. Death, though, visits the castle, and everyone dies of the Red Death. But Francesca is spared along with her lover. At the end, the Red Death meets up with the other figures that represent death. So this is another Roger Corman film with Vincent Price, adapting the works of Edgar Allan Poe. It was supposed to be the second that he did, but apparently when it first what came out was Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal, and it kind of had a cowled figure of death, and he didn't want to be, accused of plagiarism. So it got moved to several years later, and it became like the eighth or ninth of the Poe movies he did. And it was co-written by Charles Beaumont, who's probably best known for his work on The Twilight Zone. And it adapted, The Masque of the Red Death and some elements from another Poe story called Hop Frog, which I guess would be with the dwarf and the little tiny dancer. So, and this is it was a really great movie. It didn't do as well as his other Poe stories. I guess, a producer attributed it as being too arty-farty and not scary enough. And Corman actually agreed with this and said he was more interested in doing Poe films as expressions of the unconscious mind rather than pure horror. So it didn't quite do as well, but it was a Corman movie, so it obviously made money. And I think it's just beautifully done film, like all his movies that he did with Vincent Price adapting the Poe stuff. This one used sets from a movie called Beckett, which was starring Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole. And I think it won an Academy for the scenes. So, it has some really beautiful sets of all these medieval castle scenes. And, it's just like another fun movie, I think, personally, I don't. I don't mind that it wasn't so scary. I guess I don't really find any of the movies from the '60s scary. I mean, I guess kind of become jaded because maybe back then they audiences found it scary, but none of the stuff is scary. But it is a beautiful movie to watch. I mean, it's just well shot, well done. And, Vincent Price is always great to watch, and he really does make an excellent villain. Like he can play both, the good guy and the villain, but his movies where he's a villain is really top notch, and he does a great job as Prospero, this evil Satanist, and he had like what is it, Hazel Court as his consort, and she's worked with him before on some other movies, and it's just it was just a very beautifully shot movie. I enjoyed it. I thought it had some interesting ideas. It was it was a little bit more intellectual, I suppose, than some of the other ones he did before that. It had, some themes about, death and who a person's God and heaven and hell, and, some interesting ideas. And so, yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I enjoyed all the Corman, Vincent Price movies that were done during the '60s. And this one's no exception, and I highly recommend it. And if you stuck with me this long, I thank you. You're a unique individual.